please, if you are on Zoom, and you have a question, they will be addressed at the end of the presentation or during the Members Matter meeting. If you contribute to that, your comments will be heard and addressed. I don't want anyone to think that they have to be here in person to participate. So yeah, again, I want to thank you all so much, and I'm going to turn it over to Cheri Cameron, who is here with us today. She's going to be talking about the Local Records Act and records retention.
Awesome. All right. We got it. All right, good. Hey, everybody. You can hear me all right, I hope. So just want to welcome everybody to the exciting world of records management. Please try to tamp down your enthusiasm. We want to get through this in an hour. Look, I know this is an intimidating thing. It's riddled with anxiety, but I do like to take a lighthearted approach because it really is simpler than you think it is. And this is coming from a person who was also on the other side of the fence. So I do know what I'm talking about. Been there, done that. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to summarize the Local Records Act. We're going to succinctly define what a public record is. We're going to identify rules and responsibilities for managing those records. We're going to discuss efficient practices. And then hopefully, if I talk real fast, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers, because that's really where we find out what we want to know. Oh, side note, I do have most of your application numbers, if you have one, and whether or not you have one, I've got that information too. And also when you've done your last disposal, if you've registered within the last 24 hours, I'm sorry, I can't provide that for you, but your field rep can. So what is the Local Records Act? So far, so good over there?
Yeah, let's see. It is saying it's not sharing optimally.
One moment for technical difficulties.
What did she say? Oh, Matt says it's the PowerPoint editing application.
Oh, she hasn't presented. That's good.
Are we good?
She's got the notes.
Yeah, I don't want the notes.
Oh, okay. How do you know how to take that off?
I honestly.
Text me and ask, how do we take the notes?
Well,
I always do this, guys. It's like,
I have no
Okay.
idea. It should
It
name
is-
like slides presentation. All right, guys, we're librarians and we don't always have the answers right away, but we all know how to find them.
is it in, the settings in PowerPoint, isn't it?
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, wait, but that's no,
But
that's
that's,
Now
yeah,
you have to share that screen again. Display settings, you see. See, they're not.
You were
seeing-
sharing it all right. You just hadn't launched the slideshow. So
Go back and
what you were doing was fine at the first. You just needed to actually launch so that the slide was full screen.
Yeah, that should do it. Now do from beginning. There you go.
There we go. Looks good.
literally at this point, yes.
That should be correct.
Thanks for hanging in there. Huh? That's frightening. It is frightening. I've had many a dirty day.
I don't know how to get that off. Let's see.
Can we?
There we go.
something
We'll
we
just-
can- Yeah, something we can live with.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Okay, so we've covered what we're going to do, and now we're talking about the Local Records Act, which was passed in the early 60s. It's a way of providing a method for local government agencies, such as libraries, to legally dispose of their records. It establishes the Local Records Commission as the authority for determining retention periods and approving applications for authority to dispose of local records. But it also holds all local government agencies to retain the documents and records for the full retention period. All right. So the state archivist is actually the Illinois Secretary of State. And so he supports us as the local record unit to provide service and support to local government agencies. So that's why you have field representatives. Andrew Spiro, myself, and Michael Hall are your field representatives. So depending on which county you're in, that's who you should contact. A few of you lucky people belong to me. So I'm always happy to work with libraries. They are my favorite agency to work with. Oh, I should mention we are free too. I do get that question a lot. We actually provide support free of service. So this is a little bit of trivia I like to throw in after you see that there are 6 of us unicorns in the state that do this job. Here's a good number for you. Any guesses as to what that number is? That's the number of local government agencies in the state of Illinois. Now, guess which state of Illinois has the most local government agencies than any other state in the country? We're number 1. Yes. So, divide that by 6. If you don't hear from us right away, that might be why. But we do try to accommodate you as quickly as we can. Again, this is all local government agencies, not just libraries, community colleges, school districts, municipalities, et cetera, et cetera. If you receive tax money, then you are a local government agency and you need our help. So here is that really long definition of what a public record is. I lose precious life points every time I try to read through it. It is in a packet that will be shared with everybody, but pay close attention to those highlighted. Those are the most important words pulled out. So a public record is any informational material, regardless of form, produced or received pursuant to law or the transaction of public business and preserved as an evidence of activity of the local government agency. It's as simple as that. Basically, most every record you have in your library is a public record. There are a few things that aren't, and a few special things for libraries that aren't public record. So extra copies of documents, like if you have extra meeting minutes, drafts, things like that, stocks of publication, just keep 1 copy. Junk emails, your discussion groups, party announcements, there's cake in the break room. That's not public record. But library and museum material that is made by you or acquired for reference or exhibition, you do not need permission to dispose of those records. You also do not need permission to dispose of patron registration records. So those paper registration records that people fill in, you do not have to retain that for a certain amount of period. As long as you've got it into your system, you can shred it right away. It's confidential. I'm really glad the Local Records Act considered that. So just as some things are not public record, you might be surprised to know, because it's any format, that records are media neutral. So if you use email for correspondence with your patrons, even if you use text messages, your videos, audio, social media is definitely a public record. Faxes are a public record. The whole kit and caboodle. It doesn't matter the format it's in. It's the information within that format that defines what a public record is, okay? So a little comment on email, about 95% of emails are not public record. They're called transitory. So those CC'd emails, meeting requests, any of those routine things, again, cake in the break room, are not transitory records. And you don't need permission to dispose of those. I do for email recommend having an email retention policy to identify how long you're going to keep emails on a server before they're dumped. We like to have agencies have the individuals manage the records, but if your library is large enough and you've got IT support, that might be a way of managing that. For Secretary of State, my emails drop off at year 3. We're a state agency. So for local government agency, it's a 1-year retention. You're welcome to define that you're going to hold up longer than that 1 year. That's up to you. If you record board meetings too, note that you need to get permission to dispose of those recordings as well. So this is a special library slide. You guys serve the public pretty much more than any other agency besides schools, but it's slightly different. So pay close attention to those email correspondence you have with patrons and make sure that you're disposing of that annually. If you have surveillance video in your library, that is also a public record, and we'll talk how to deal with that. If you have social media, be real cognizant of freedom of speech. We do have guidelines for that as well. And again, if those open session of board meetings, if you record those, you should submit those for disposal as well. If you have an application already and you don't have these items on there, they can be added. So I threw this in, this is a new slide, bear with me. I get this question a lot. How can I manage social media? Generally, your posts are a 3-year retention. And if you don't know what that means, we will keep going and it'll all make sense in the end, I hope. So we suggest that you have an internal log of postings in a Word document and have that as your original document. It's in-house, it's not on a third-party platform. And when those postings hit 3 years, you can get permission to dispose of them. This only works if you don't allow comments on your posts. And there is a way of turning off comments. My feeling on this is if you're not going to allow comments, then why the heck are you using social media? I will say these guidelines came out in 2019, and in my opinion, that was kind of a day late, $1 short. But what can you do? If you do allow comments, we suggest that you turn the comments off the post for no less than after, leave it out for 48 hours, have something in your posted policy about how you manage social media, and then turn off the comments after a specified period of time. Every time there's a comment on a post in social media, it becomes a new original document that you have to manage, okay? That's why we say, comments maybe not so helpful. But if you do have comments, turn off the comments after a posted period of time, and then hold on to that original post for 3 years. It's a little bit harder to manage that way, but it can be done. Again, develop a policy, post it on your social media page, pin it up at the top saying this is how we handle social media. You are welcome to immediately delete anything that isn't correct or protected by freedom of speech, but everything else, even I don't like your library, has to stay up there because they have the freedom to post that. Do not ever delete comments that are not protected under freedom of speech. So what's in it for me? This is the part where I tell you I'm not the records police. I'm literally here to keep you from the records police. By being compliant with the Local Records Act, you will avoid all the legal entanglements that can be incurred if you do not follow the Local Records Act. It is a Class 4 felony to dispose of records without permission. Do libraries get FOIA'd a lot? In my experience, they get FOIA'd a fair amount. So if you can provide proof that you've legally disposed of records, I call disposal certificates your get out of jail free card. You can avoid some costly lawsuits and, again, legal entanglements, they happen. Look, it feels really good to get rid of records, surprisingly good. And I compare it to like cleaning your refrigerator. You know, like it gets a little crowded in that refrigerator sometimes, and leftovers are left a little too long. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. But when you do clean out your refrigerator, I don't know about you, but every time I do, my electricity bill goes up because I keep opening the door to see how beautiful it looks. And this is very much the same kind of feeling. You do have the alternative of keeping everything, but it's hard to find records. If you're FOIA'd, if you have too many records that have met their retention, everything you haven't legally disposed of is subject to FOIA. And it's kind of like, you know, how you clear out the trees so you can appreciate the forest. So option number 4 is not something I ever recommend. Okay, so I've alluded to an application for authority to dispose of local records, hereafter known as app, because that's way too many syllables. Your app is basically your retention schedule, and it's unique to your agency. It's a list of records that you report as having when you first make contact with us. It's completed with a records inventory, and you're going to identify the year of each record series, the earliest year. You're going to identify volume, whether it's electronic or paper volume. The good news is once your app is in place, it's going to be in place for 30 or 40 years. You'll never have to do another records inventory. One and done, okay? It gives you authority to seek permission. It does not give you permission in and of itself to dispose of records, okay? So you can't proceed without an app. But once it's in place, you never have to do it again. It's fluid too, I should mention. So if you leave something out or need to make changes, that is not a problem. Just contact your field rep. This is the cover of what an app looks like. Some of you I know are very familiar with this. Some of you have some pretty recent applications. Basically, it just has your contact information, and that's the address you would use as long as it's the address you have. In the top right corner, you'll see application number, and that is how you refer all communication with us so that we know how to find you and help you in the best way possible. So once you have that application number, that's what you have, okay? It's just going to say that you are assuring that all the records you're asking to dispose of have met retention. But also, if you're digitizing, you're going to let us know that too. We'll talk about that in a moment. And finally, if you know you need to keep something longer than what our minimum retention is, you'll know to do that. So a good example of this is a lot of times federal grants will require you to keep records 5 years past the last expenditure report, but we're always going to have a 3-year past expenditure report. So you just need to know, if your grant says, hey, you have to hold on to this for 5 years, you're going to hold on to it for 5 years. Inside of your application, you'll have a table of contents. And this is just a way of indexing like records. So all of your administrative records can go in one place. Your fiscal personnel records can either be together or separate, depending on preference. And then finally, your library records. And we find this is an efficient way of doing things, because if you need to add records to a section, it's going to stay in the same section and all the same purpose, as opposed to being at the end of your application where sometimes things get lost. And within the application, this is what it's going to look like. So you'll see in the first column, you've got your item numbers. And then in the second column, you see that underlined portion there. Those are record series titles. And beneath each title, you've got a date, and that's your reported earliest record you could find. You've got your total volume, and you can see there on item 101, it also has paper volume and electronic volume. And then you've got your annual accumulation. That is something that's going to be kind of important to you as we progress, you'll understand. And you see the word negligible too. Negligible refers to a small amount. So if you visualize a ream of copy paper, that's 0.1 cubic foot. So mathematically, negligible corresponds to 0.1 cubic foot. So let's extrapolate from that. A 10-ring box of copy paper is going to be a cubic foot. So it's good to kind of have a visualization there. These are some of the records that most local government agencies have: construction records, contracts and agreements, bids, et cetera, et cetera. So it progresses thusly. You have your application. Remember, that gives you authority to seek permission. So your next step is a disposal certificate. All of these links that are in here are going to be in the document that's going to be shared, that Kate's going to share with you. But to get to the disposal certificate, just do a search: local records disposal, Illinois. And the first link that should come up is the link to the disposal certificates. Okay. I always tell people to not just click the link and start typing, because you might have trouble saving your work. So download that file to your computer, open it up from your computer, and you'll be able to save everything you've typed and theoretically reuse it again next year by changing the dates. Fingers crossed. Sometimes we throw a curveball and change the disposal certificate, and then you've got to just retype a little. So also helpful, and this will be available to you too. This is actually the document you'll be receiving, is Managing Your Records and the Local Records Act. It has all the instructions that you need for filling out a disposal certificate. Of the utmost importance in that booklet are the cheat sheets. I think they're on page 11, don't quote me. But what it is a retention calculator. So for example, your financial records have a 7-year retention. By calendar year in the year 2023, you can use an end date of 2015. If you like to do fiscal year, well, you just wait till the start of your new fiscal year, and then you can bring that up a little bit closer and include your whole fiscal year. So it's July. A lot of people are submitting for a fiscal year that ends in June now. And then below, also in the booklet, you've got a way to compute cubic feet as well. Does anybody scan their documents here? Anybody do any scanning? I don't find that libraries generally do this, so we'll touch lightly on this. Basically, you can scan documents that are kept for a short time period. We don't really recommend it for permanent at this time, because you're converting a paper document to ones and zeros, and preserving ones and zeros permanently still makes this kind of queasy. So we're just not there yet in that mindset. But when you are scanning, you can't dispose of the records that you're scanning, even though you've made digital copies. You have to get permission first. Then when you have permission, you can dispose of those scanned records prior to them meeting retention, because you've told us that you have a digital surrogate. Okay, this works pretty well for invoices and bills, your banking statements, things like that. Some things are actually born digital, and that's okay. But this is a way of reducing some of the volume you might have to store for 7 years. Okay. When that electronic surrogate meets its retention, then you must file a second disposal certificate with electronic volume, telling us that you're ready to dispose of your electronic records. Okay. It makes good business sense to keep on that and not have to hold on to those electronic records. Even though they don't take up a whole lot of space, you don't need them at that point. If you are intending to maintain digital permanent records, then you actually have to have a records management system. There are a lot of bells and whistles and hoops that I make you jump through. But if you are looking for a records management system, if you're bidding, make sure that they're DOD 5015 compliant. Always ask that question. If the provider can't answer that or doesn't know what that means, then that's not the system for you. If they say, yep, we are compliant, then you would be compliant with the state of Illinois requirements. The rules for scanning, basically all the rules are found in the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, Administrative Code. That's available online. It'll be in the link in the booklet as well. That just lines out everything you need to follow. So Records disposal certificate. This is the nitty gritty. This is the permission. This is the get out of jail free card. This is what you need to submit to us to get that permission. So you saw the first 2 pages of the application that I showed you earlier, and you see that it kind of corresponds, right? You've got your application item number in the first column. You've got your record series title. We ask that you do not deviate from that record series title. If you have something that you don't know where it belongs, that's when you contact your field rep and we say where it can go, or we'll add it and give you something that will work for you. The third column is your inclusive dates. Now, this was a new application, so our start date would be the date that's listed in your application, and we would bring it up to the end date using that retention calculator. Okay, so that's where we get the date ranges. When you start doing disposal certificates annually, you would just use the date following the end date of your disposal certificate. And every year you would list 1 year. So for starters with a new application, you would probably use closer to your total volume reported. Going forward, when you're doing your annual disposal certificates, you're going to use your annual accumulation and list that as your volume. You'd also list electronic volume. Whatever you have and you want permission to dispose of, that's what you'll be listing. We do suggest now that you list the entire non-permanent application. Anything that isn't permanent on your application, you should be getting permission annually to dispose of. Even if it doesn't take up too much space, go ahead and get that permission. Okay, what else do we need to know about this? So you see that asterisk next to item 102? That tells us that you're scanning records and that you wish to dispose of them prior to them meeting retention. So for bids, successful bids have a retention of 10 years. But because we've notified you've notified us that it's digitized, then we will give permission for that. Okay, so that's how you're going to do that. This is the bottom of the certificate. I've totaled out my volume. I've included electronic volume there, and I'm ready to print it and wet sign it. And you see your signature is going to go there. And just as we usually sign things, we date it to the right. Okay, so leave blank that date line above. That line is for us. We're going to assign a disposal date for you, and that's where it's going to be written in. You see down in the lower left corner, only sign there if you're scanning records and asking for permission to dispose of those records prior to meeting retention. Do not sign that lower left corner if you're not scanning. We will assume you've scanned everything and you're still responsible for those records then. Okay? So what next? You filled out your certificate, you've printed and you signed it, and it threw me. Okay. We'll have questions about this, but remember your field rep can help you. Those surveillance videos you're going to submit for the upcoming year, because we know that surveillance is going to override itself after a specified period of time. And that specified period of time is usually less than 30 days. In fact, it overwrites daily after a period of 30 days. Oh, what's happening?
It did catch up. I think there was a little bit of a lag.
We had
Okay.
an internet lag.
Okay.
It's fine.
Oh, good times, everybody. Okay.
Yeah, just some lag.
So-
All good.
Video surveillance. So you're going to submit for the upcoming year. You're going to do this annually because you can only do it for 12 months at a time. For example, during the month of February of 2023, your system is probably going to be working on the January collection of surveillance video. Okay. So again, just want to allude to the importance of getting that surveillance video permission. That's for records yet to come. Your regular disposal are for records of the past. Hope that makes sense. There will be plenty of time for questions. Okay, so you print your disposal certificate. You've wet signed. You can email it to recordsmanagementilsos.gov. That may not be in the book, so you might want to write that email down. Records MGT ilsos.gov. If you have a super friendly field rep, they will also review those certificates for you before they go on the pile in Springfield, just to make sure if, if there needs to be any corrections. If it's your first time filling out a certificate, by all means, send it to us first for review. It's really nice to have a second pair of eyes. And I felt like I was going to go to jail if I sent in the wrong disposal certificate. It's like taking a test and knowing you're going to fail, but it's really not like that. We're friendly people. We will gladly correct you and make sure everything's on the up and up. So when it goes to Springfield, it will either be approved and sent back to you with the disposal written on it, or it'll be rejected. And oftentimes this is where you meet your I am going to ask you to print and file those, even though you're going to receive them by email. Typically, print and file that with your application. These are permanently retained documents. You're always going to want to know where these documents are in case you get asked for records, and you can say, ha, permission to dispose of them. Doesn't how you dispose of them, whether you can incinerate them, however works for you works for us. There's nothing in the law about that. Okay, sometimes emergencies happen. I'm told by my grand boss, but fire, weather, these are things you can't help. So damaged. You can't rep, and we will come running. We will interview you about what happened, talk to you about how to prevent it from happening in the future. We will give you corrective measures if that's warranted, but you must provide evidence to us. So it's a letter of request that comes with your disposal certificate, as well as a report. And we get that to the director of the archives, and it's up to his discretion to approve. He usually approves it, and then you can immediately get rid of the records. So, if you have water damage, contact your field rep. But let's talk efficiency. This can be really intimidating, this whole process, right? Filled with anxiety. You don't want to do it, you don't want to do it, but you kind of have to do it. And it will be better on the other end, okay? So contact your field rep. That's your first line of attack. If you just don't know what to do, contact your field rep. We'll make an appointment to visit with you and tell you what needs to happen, okay? Whether you're
You're currently muted.
How long have we been muted?
It just happened.
Just a few seconds.
Yeah, almost like whenever you did your screen. And like, I don't know what it did.
All right, good?
Nope.
No.
The screen sharing is off
Thank
now.
you so much for your support. I mean, really,
Oh,
I do appreciate it.
yeah, and thank you all for your patience.
I think we lost internet. When I-
It did pop up
Oh,
with lost
okay.
internet.
You need to restart your screen sharing.
So I wonder if knocked you off. Okay. Did you knock us off? Let me see. I'm disconnecting now. You'd be on. Okay. So weird. And I can use my phone actually. Okay, it says I'm connected. Can you
Yeah, let's-
hit escape to minimize the screen a little bit? I want you, yeah. It's not letting you.
No, it's not.
Your screen seems to be frozen.
Oh, no, not frozen. Well, that's a good one to be frozen on.
Well, they can't see it, unfortunately.
I
We're
know.
back.
right.
Nope, okay.
And now
that's
it's working. So
That is the next to last
a little
one.
bit more
could you-
working.
here,
There we
can I-
go. Okay.
Hit that button right there, Kate. Go down here and make sure she's still connected to the internet. And it looks like she
Yes.
is. Okay. And then
Let's try sharing
Sharing
the
again.
screen again.
Kate. cut. So. Yes, it's working. Okay.
And we're back.
Why is this?
Any wonder why archivists are technophobes? Okay. Okay. So, welcome back, folks. Sorry about that. Thanks for hanging in there. This is the next to last slide. Ideas for an efficient approach. I am all about efficiency. I want this to be as simple as possible for you so you can schedule it annually, get it taken care of. Any questions, any problems, contact your field rep. We can do site visits. We can help you out. I always say, make sure you've got records management in a job description. People come and go. Job descriptions pretty much stick around. Okay. Submit annual disposal certificates. Even if boxes are not falling on your head, maintain that permission. This is a proactive approach, not a reactive approach. If we're reactive, we're going to say, I'll do it next year, and it piles up. The more you have, the more you can be FOIA'd for. Okay? If you're doing this annually and getting permission, you've got a set time in your calendar that you're going to do it. You don't have to dispose of records when you hit that disposal date. The disposal will happen when it happens. You have permission in perpetuity. Okay, so anything you have permission for that you maintain kind of becomes a convenience copy. You don't have to ask permission for it again. Keep it as long as you want, but you already had permission to dispose of it. Okay? Again, I've already alluded to this, but include every record series that's not permanent on your disposal certificate. If you keep that PDF form and we haven't thrown you a curveball by altering ever so slightly the first page of the disposal certificate, which requires you to resubmit on the new certificate, then you can go in and change your dates every year. And if you're using annual accumulation, that's okay. So you'll just be changing the dates, submitting it annually. You're good to go until next year. We do suggest arranging your physical records to match your application because that can make disposal really efficient. And really, the best way to understand it is just do it, right? The first time I heard about records management, I'll admit it, my head imploded a little bit. I'm an archivist, I'm a hoarder. Well, now I'm a sorter, right? And we keep what we need to keep. So that's my time. Where do you find us? It's ilsos.gov. There are a variety of links to click: home, department, archives, and then state and local government. Again, this is linked in the booklet you'll all be receiving. And now it's question time. Oh, I do have, like I said, for most of you, I've got your application numbers. And when you've done disposals, I also know when you do not have an application. Is Sumter Township here? I just want to do a shout out to Sumter Township. You're my childhood library. If you're absolutely, if you're doing just a year, it implies January to December. Okay. If you're doing your fiscal year, then you're going to want to include months. Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
It says, most of my career was in private academic institutions, but most of them, did receive Title IV student loan funds because Title IV funds are from tax dollars. Does that mean that these private academic institutions are subject to the Local Records Act?
No, they're not. That's all I can say on that. No.
I would say submit for all non-permanent records,
Mhm.
the dates. So the stuff you're saying that we don't have to keep, like we get a flyer in the mail. Does that fall under that, or can we just toss?
You can
that?
just toss anything that's unsolicited that you get in mail. That's junk mail.
So what is all non-permanent records?
All well, okay, so your paid invoices, things like that, all your financial records typically have a 7-year retention. Those are not permanent. So there's not a lot that
Oh,
is
okay.
permanent. That would be,
Yes, we were on other, we were over some stuff. I just haven't got a chance to do it yet.
yeah.
So
So
we're working on, that's our project for August.
Mhm.
And I was really glad they were having this, so I could remember some of the things we talked about.
so we are,
Cheri came to the library.
did.
She is wonderful. If she is your rep, you are lucky.
I'm going to blow your mind now. I can type up a disposal certificate. We're taking a slightly different approach. That proactive approach is really the direction we're going now. I can type you up a disposal certificate. You got that permission, and then you can just continue on with that disposal. So I'm glad you're here today. I was
Well,
looking forward to seeing you again.
I still haven't started, I mean, we have been working on it. I mean, we were going to do it in July, but someone could use our boardroom every week.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if anyone knows, but I did not know, I have been in my job 20 years and I did not know about this record stuff.
Mhm.
Sadly and embarrassingly, I didn't. And so
It's-
our basement full of stuff went way before I even started there. So it's been scary to think about it, but she made really good points. And like, if someone comes back and it's the 40 or 1973,
Mhm.
whatever's down in the basement, you would have to turn that over because you don't have a record. It's
Right.
because You don't have any.
Proof that you've disposed of records. See? Yeah.
So we're anxious to get started.
Good.
So. hopefully-
Let me, not the records police, not the records police. So, okay. Some points on that. We get mired in the perfectionism of it all, right? We want it to be perfect. It's the enemy of progress. So report some dates, report some volume, be as close to right as you can. But if you make a mistake, we can correct it. If you find records that precede the records that you report, put it on the disposal certificate. It's going to be okay. So close enough is good enough.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
So do you recommend, because I'm gonna go down the basement and bring up
Mhm.
1984 or whatever, instead of, so do you recommend filing stuff as 7 years, 3 years, 1 year, instead of filing like years? Because all I like
Typically-
put everything in a container said this is 1992. So should you file stuff by
Ye-
retention?
You should file stuff by record type. I think what you have in the basement is primarily fiscal records, right? And so if you do box annually, that's okay. You may have things in there with a 2-year retention. And if that's the case, you would just hold on to those 2-year retained documents for the full 7 years. Okay, and it's easier to do that. Keep like records together. Like you wouldn't want to put your bid specs and proposals in with your financial records. You certainly wouldn't want to put your board meeting minutes, and you would not want to put your audit with those temporary financial records.
Ordinance forever.
Permanent,
Personnel records, what, 75?
60 years, or until age 78.
So-
Yeah, there are a
And that's
variety of
what's wrong for
retentions.
us. We can't just say we can get rid of this box. I mean, we have to dig out all the stuff. The 60-year stuff has to be separated from the
Mhm.
3-year stuff. So
Yeah.
that's what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, those permanent records are primarily your board meeting minutes. If you have any construction plans or maps or anything like that, those are permanent. Your audits are permanent, and then your personnel records. And that's your work and salary history only for personnel records. That has a 60-year retention minimum, or until the employee reaches age 78. If they're still working at age 78, then you're going to tack on 10 years. So again, contact your field rep. We have ways of presenting that on a certificate. So once you see it, you can continue to use it like that.
So if you have like your paper records, I'm sorry, I'm dying. But you also have
It's tricky.
books. You know,
Mhm.
so if you have it in QuickBooks, you have to save the paper and vice versa. If you have it in paper, you have to.
Well, it depends on how you've received it, right? So if you print a report from QuickBooks, then you've printed a report and you have to retain it as a report. If it's a monthly report, it's going to be 2 years. If it's an annual report, it's going to be 7. So a lot of times in QuickBooks, you have data that you use to produce reports. You may just have it in electronic form. That's fine. It may represent a ledger, and ledgers have a retention period of 7 years. So after 7 years, you can start to purge some of those electronic records.
So let me ask, if you then take that report to your board meeting,
Mhm.
it now becomes part of the board packet.
It does.
It is referenced in the minutes.
It
and
is.
You do not have to retain it permanently.
Yes, you
because it
do.
supports the minutes.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, that one report that you might have had to your disposal on.
Correct.
You now have to keep it forever.
It depends on whether it's in the packet or whether it's a separate report that the treasurer has compiled. Usually you'll see like there are multiple copies, so the treasurer would hold on to theirs for 2 years. And then if it's in the board packet, then that could potentially be permanent as well. So any extra reports that are in a course packet, or sorry, a board packet. Oh man, I let slip. I used to work in a community college. I keep using course packet. Anyway, if it's in your course packet, if it's not duplicated material, if it's a unique material, then you'd want to hold on to it with your minutes. Okay.
But that's my problem. I don't
Mhm.
have enough storage anywhere to
Mhm.
hold on board packets
Okay.
for decades.
Yeah.
So
It-
I don't know what to do about it,
I-
because I'm actually creating these documents and they're all electronic.
I would,
So I
well,
feel
yeah,
very strongly about paper.
sure.
You know, because I've got them on the computer.
Right.
The computer is being backed up.
Mm-mm-mm.
I know,
Nope,
but it's just one of those things. What do I do with them?
that won't work. That won't
What
work.
do I do with them?
So if you are intending to save permanent documents electronically, we recommend that you scan those paper documents because it's much harder to modify a PDFA, right? Your Word document has to be PDFA. You have to have a records management system. You have to have the minimum of 2 copies, and that does not include your backup. Okay, so there are hoops, and you can proceed that way. Again, if your packet contains duplicate
We're not gonna be able
material.
to afford any of what you just said.
Absolutely.
So,
This is what I'm
so-
saying.
but what do you do? I mean, because again, I have.
Okay,
one
I have an
document.
answer for you. Yep, I have an answer for you. So we also have a regional archival depository, and they're scattered throughout the state. Yours would probably be Eastern. There might be another one down there I'm not quite sure of. But what they are they will help smaller local government agencies with their permanent documents. They will accession those permanent documents. They have the ability to say, we will up to this date, we will accession them, and then you've got to manage the more contemporary records, but they could help you with those older bound volumes, and they'll microfilm them as preservation.
And I know we did have another hand up in the room, but
Okay.
there have been a number of questions coming in through the
Yes.
chat. So I'm going to turn it over to Leah to get some of those addressed.
Okay, I want to make sure that. So we had one that said, what are the materials that are considered permanent records? I think you addressed
Mhm.
that. And I asked her to let us know if she still had questions. Next question, HR person here. So if I'm understanding this correctly, records management process takes precedence over human resources law
Mm-mm.
regarding
No.
employee files, I-9s and state tax
No.
form. Is that correct?
That is not correct. So our retentions are based on statute.
Okay.
So the retention should match what your expectations are for retaining those documents. Your I-9s, for example, you have to keep those filed separately from your personnel records. And they have a certain retention that goes along with that type of record. And then, of course, your HR records would have a different retention.
And I have one more question. It says, can you provide a sample or suggestion of the verbiage we should pin at the top of our social media site?
Yes, it's in the social media guidelines that are available at our website. There's actually text you can pull from that.
That's my slides.
Yeah, the link is in the slides, but it's also available in the booklet that everybody will be getting.
And we had a question in here.
So I may have the opposite from a lot of people. I shouldn't find a lot wrong. I mean, I've gone through, like, when I had to show proof that we moved from a township library to a district library, I searched our library up and down. I
Yeah.
know the township and dig through their old records, which they didn't have a lot of their old records
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
But I did find something. And I run into that a lot for our, we've had many, many directors over the years.
Exactly.
And I don't think some of the earlier ones even realized what they were supposed to be.
Right.
So I'm in a situation where like, I have the most current records.
Mhm.
Once, honestly, I think that's very lost.
Do you- And that's entirely possible. Do you know if you have an application?
I do.
I do.
do.
You do. Okay. Right. And disposals just weren't done on it.
No,
No.
we are working on this, but in
Okay.
the past.
Yeah.
What
Look-
I'm saying is the record you're saying should be.
Oh, I know.
permanent,
I know. Mhm.
like,
They're just not there. So, yeah,
They're not there.
the best thing to do is just kind of start fresh and start doing the things the right way
Yeah.
going forward. And that's all you can do. You as an individual would be liable for loss that happened prior to you becoming the director. Okay. Does anybody want to know what their app number is if they don't know? We've all figured out who our field reps are, I hope-ish. What library? Oh, hello, Philo. I already know the answer to this.
Okay.
You do not have an app. Would you like one?
Yes, you
I will give you my card, sir. You're one of mine.
I just say something that might be helpful. We went through this a few years back, and what I do is we have an entire wall now of file cabinets. And so on the outside, the numbers are the numbers of our keepers. And then the very first one is binder, and then I have all my records and retention documents. So if I come by something new, I just go to that binder, then I go find my number. And then it also makes it easy when it's time to actually purge documents, because everything's organized.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes space is a premium.
So we're fortunate to have a wall.
I do recommend when you are filing that you have the date of the records themselves. Also put the disposal date. And that makes it a lot easier too as you're purging.
Sure, we have.
No, no, I just feel like maybe once I get into it, I'll understand it better, but it
Mhm.
seems, it's just kind of confusing. not-
It is overwhelming, but once you get into it, you're just like, oh, okay, it's house cleaning. Yeah.
I'll be in a real big person.
I've seen your volume, Jackie, though. Your volume is not nearly as overwhelming as some other things. You can do it.
I know you were very helpful, and I'm really excited to get it done. I
Good.
think it's
All right.
Yeah, and most of the chat comments that are coming in are libraries who are attending virtually who would like their app number.
Okay.
So I don't know what the best way to, if Leah says what library and you say the app number, that works.
Yep.
Best.
Okay. I'm going to turn on my microphone. Now comes the weird part. Okay, this is Leah. Can you hear me?
Maybe. Yes,
Yes,
okay.
okay.
Yes.
So
So
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
say the library name and Cheri's gonna say the number, okay? So this is for Sumter.
Sumter Township. Hello, my childhood library. You need to have an application.
She does,
Okay,
okay, so
you do
Sumter does not have
one.
one.
Nope.
Evans Public Library.
Evans, I think I don't have your, oh, no, yeah, I do. Yeah, you were late, but I got you. You are 07:107. So you have an application from this century, which is good, and you shouldn't need a new one. Your last disposal, however, was in 2016. And you should probably consider doing a new disposal certificate.
Before I do want to do a disclaimer that the last, if you registered but on 7/18, but by 4:30 PM, I was able to get your library number or your library name to Cheri to pull these records. So if you registered for this either the evening or yesterday, we do not have that information.
Okay, West Salem.
West Salem. Also, I could not find an application for you.
Okay,
So Mike Hall is your field rep.
Warden.
I think, were they a late? I don't think I have Warden.
Okay,
Do you have
Warden,
county? I don't have that information. Contact your field rep.
Okay, Columbia.
Columbia. Again, I don't have you.
Okay, Carmi.
Okay, say it again.
Carmi. CARMI.
These are like in order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that may have been a late.
If it was after the date that Kate just said, she may not have had time to pull yours, so you'll have to contact your field rep.
Yep.
Okay, Melvin.
Mhm.
Thought I got that one. Oh,
Yep. So Melvin, you have an application from 1999. It's 99:109. I have no disposal certificate on file for you. Okay, you're in Ford County. So you're mine, all mine. And I can help you out with that.
Okay, Rochester.
Rochester has one. Rochester, your application is 12:221. Your last disposal was 2014. So it's time to submit a new one.
DuQuoin.
Point I know I have. Thank you. See, helpful. 05:007. You did a disposal, and by you, I'm in your library, of course, did a disposal in 2005. So as soon as you got that application, you did a disposal. I highly recommend annual disposals.
Stonington.
There you go. Stonington in Christian County. We have no application on file for your library. Andrew Spiro is your field rep.
Centralia.
Your application is 03194. And you did a disposal as soon as you had that application in 2003. Time to do a new one.
And Sally Logan.
Sally Logan, I forgot. 08353. So fairly recent enough. And 2019 was your last disposal. So you're okay-ish. Is that it?
Mount Zion, correct? Yeah.
Mount Zion. Oh, I know I had Mount Zion. DuQuoin is written down there. The field rep for DuQuoin. Oh, okay. Mount Zion, I'll get to you in a minute. In Perry County. So where's Perry County? Is it south? South? So probably Mike Hall. Mount Zion, you have 09064. And 2017 was your last disposal. Macon, that's here. That would be Andrew Spiro. We recommend an annual disposal. Yeah.
Wonder if we can go back real quick to that slide that has where everyone. Or the field reps.
Yeah. There you go. It's kind of smallish. That map is also in the Managing Your Records booklet, along with our emails. Any other questions?
We have a comment. Cheri, you helped me do my first disposal in 2020. You were truly very helpful.
Oh, I like to help.
Yeah, we are coming in right at 10:59. We started right at 10 o'clock. This is timed really well. Does anybody have any questions? Last minute questions? Give any room? Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Cheri, for being here today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Will the slides be made available?
Yes, this or
I mean, we can. I don't
Okay.
generally look. Here's the thing: as a state worker, I try to just only share things that are approved by the Secretary of State. So these are my own slides. You can share them, just don't share them around.
But this information is available.
It's all available. Everything we
share the
talked
link
about.
with the avail-
Definitely
Okay.
share the link. No, doesn't work like that. This is just reference.
This presentation was also recorded,
Yes.
so if the slides are not available to you, please go back and, fast forward through the video till we get to the slide that you're looking for.
And I will say, like I've said, there are 6 of us unicorns that do this in the state. And I say unicorns because we all kind of approach it in slightly different ways. They're all valid ways. So do work with your field rep and they will guide you to what they feel is the most efficient approach. Okay, so when in doubt, the field rep is your point of contact.
Well, thank you again, Cheri, for being here.
Thank you.
We're gonna stop sharing. Okay.